for joining us. Ajahn Jay, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, you've been sort of a long-time commentator of Thai politics, and there's a lot of people that are saying that this election is a monumentous one, an unprecedented one. Can you sort of go into that and why it might be a more significant election than the others that have come before it?
All elections are important,
Yeah.
but what sets this one apart is the agenda on display being put to contest. I think we had elections in 2001, 2005, 07, 11, 2019, and before the last 2 decades, caught elections. When I was young, was never really about policies. It was about personalities, patronage networks, and the policy platforms were vague, like they want to bring good life, happiness, prosperity, vote for me, and everything will be great for the nation. But I think in 2001, the Thaksin Shinawat's party machine, Thai Thai, they came in with a different ball game. And I think that ball game was about catering to the poor, addressing the urban rural divide, and policies became paramount. And initially in 2001, 2005, Thaksin was criticized, reviled, vilified, if you will, for intoxicating the masses. That populism was a bad thing, was kind of misleading the masses just to get the votes and get the power and then to be corrupt and all that. Now, after 2 decades, we're seeing a different agenda emerging. Yes, populism now is the name of the game. I think it's par for the course now. You see all the parties are populist now, right? So, I mean, I've been saying that Thaksin has won the populism war. But, his party, Pheu Thai now, is fighting a war they have already won, which is the populism platforms, the various parties, and the Pheu Thai has a 10,000 baht scheme, it looks very gimmicky, but that's what they do. What's new here? What makes this election new and unprecedented and exciting to many people is a Move Forward Party. The Move Forward Party has been dissolved once as Future Forward. Thaksin's Pheu Thai has been dissolved twice in 2007, 2008. Move Forward now comes with a different agenda, moving the frontier of Thai politics to the next stage. It's no longer just about catering to the poor, to the provinces, but structural reforms, reforming the traditional institutions that have run the place here, call the shots here. And those are the military, the monarchy, judiciary, bureaucracy. And that's why I think people are excited because, I mean, a lot of people, I think, feel that, Thailand has been stuck for so long and there needs to be change. There needs to be reform. And Move Forward has tapped into those sentiments and has really struck a chord. And that's why I think this election now moves us to the next stage in Thai politics.
Right, and you mentioned how you think that, and it's stuff that you've argued in your articles and speeches that you've given about how populism has won, and we see that in the policies of everyone, right? From Pheu Thai to Rwam Thai Sang Chat to Thai Sang Thai, from both sides of the spectrum, everyone sort of has their own take on populist policies, whether it's a handout or whether it's stipends for certain groups in the economy. We see that going, but do you see this election more of a referendum on those kind of issues, like the populist issues, or more of a referendum on where Thailand is going in terms of its political system, where the old guard is sort of up against the new guard with Move Forward, and it's more of a referendum on democracy versus the guided democracy that Rwam Thai Sang Chat espouses?
Well, it's a combination with a lot of overlap, as you can see. I mean, you use the word referendum. I think that's a fair characterization of this election. It's a vote for or against the last 9 years of General Prayut as Prime Minister, 5 years military government, 4 years after election in 2019, based on the constitution written during the coup era. So I think at the same time, a vote here is also a vote for democracy, in Thailand. I mean, democracy, I think, has nuances, but certainly having a military coup is not democracy, and having a military coup inspired constitution that we have now from 2017 constitution, military inspired, that's not democracy. So I think people want to have a voice, a say, and I think people want to have their collective decision, their collective will, popular will to decide, to be decisive, to run the place and to determine the outcomes. And that's why I think this election says a lot about all of that. It's also an election about whether General Prayut can continue. We can see the numbers speak for themselves from the polling. I mean, we have different polls, and not all the polls are reliable, but by and large, on average, the polls do not point to big victory for the pro-military parties, United Thai Nation, Rom Thai Sang Chat, or Palang Pracharat. But the poll suggests that the opposition parties, Pheu Thai and Move Forward, are going to win by big margins. So I mean, already we're seeing Thailand is changing, and the changing Thai society is manifesting here in this polling, this vote today. I think they want to turn away from the military authoritarian past. They want to embrace a more democratic future, and especially for young people. I mean, the future is the key word. They want to have a better future for Thailand in order to have a better future for themselves.
As a longtime observer of Thai politics, do you is the youth vote now something that you've ever seen in your lifetime, where there's a lot of people between, let's say, between 18 and 40 that are really geared up for the election, really excited about it, really pushing forward with it? Has this been something that you've ever seen? Is this something that has happened before and is manifesting itself again, or is this a very unique thing that's starting in Thai politics?
I think it's a new phenomenon because the youth vote, the demographics, the younger voices below 40, you mentioned even below 35, first-time voters. There has never been an organization, a critical mass, and a political consciousness among young people like today. Normally, young people are apathetic. When I was growing up, I mean, you turn away from politics, and politics was patronage driven. And older people, I mean, they would even buy votes, and there's a lot of vote buying and all of that. And you can see this 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I mean, a lot of people, voted for the Thaksin parties, Thai Rak Thai, Palang Prachachon, and they were not, across strata, across different segments of society. But it was not really the youth vote. I think the crystallization of younger voices was really a 2020, 2019 election. I mean, 2019 elections in March 2019, Future Forward captured the collective imagination of young people because they grew up seeing two military coups, especially in 2014, and they saw that their future was being squandered by the military authority and the authoritarian era. Constitution was very crooked, and Thailand. They can also see Vietnam, Indonesia surging ahead, and Thailand was being left behind. And this is their future. So when the party Future Forward came up, it was really it struck a chord among them, right? And then the party was dissolved, summarily dissolved, under bogus charges in February 2020, and sparking nationwide youth protests all over the country, especially on campuses. So these young people, they had a public political consciousness that I haven't seen before, and a critical mass and organization and willingness. No, they used to be called the keyboard people, right? They would sit behind keyboards and have social media expressions and complaints and so on. But now they actually go to the voting booth. And so, after the dissolution of Future Forward, I think, in fact, it actually strengthened the party because when it became Move Forward, these young people are even stronger now, their conviction. I mean, you can see the rallies, a lot of conviction, a lot of passion. I mean, the other rallies I see from other parties, especially pro-military parties, look kind of flat. But the Move Forward party has a lot of energy, enthusiasm, excitement. So, these young people, I mean, new phenomenon. I don't think we've seen this before, and it's going to change Thailand.
You might have noticed that our audience, our target demographic for Thai Inquirer skews quite young. We have a lot of very young people, young professionals, students that follow us on all our platforms. And there's a lot of anxiety that we're seeing in the comments, a lot of anxiety when we talk to these students about how the conservative establishment at every turn since the 2006 coup has sort of stepped in after an election to nullify the results of that election, starting with Kun Samak's government, with Kun Somshai's government, with what happened with what happened to Kun Yingluck's government after the coup, and then with the dissolution of the Future Forward Party after the 2019 election. If Move Forward gains a lot of ground and Pheu Thai does well as is expected, do you think that conservative establishment would sit idly by and accept the results of that election, or do you think that there might be some extrajudicial, behind the scenes maneuvering that might result in the nullification of this poll?
It depends, and I mean this. I mean, it depends on the results. I mean, your audience is young people. I also have been working with young people myself. I've been a university lecturer for 30 years, and I've seen, in the last, I would say 5, 6 years especially, there's been a kind of a certain consciousness among them and almost a consensus among them that the country needs to change. It's not going in the right direction. And so I think we saw the protests in 2020. If there's another party dissolution, we can be sure that there will be protests. I mean, dissolution is a disenfranchisement of voters, right? If this happened in any other country, there will be protests because basically people's votes, people's rights to determine their collective future is being robbed and deprived and taken away when you dissolve a party. So I think that there's a lot of anxiety, certainly among younger voters, because we've seen a lot of dirty business here in Thailand, and it's one-sided, it's biased. 2 military coups, multiple dissolutions of major political parties, disenfranchising millions of people, 2 constitutions during the military eras, and then all kinds of ban and disqualifications of elected representatives, MPs, and so on. So people are right to be very anxious about what's next. It's almost like we can see what the results will be. I mean, the pro-military party is not going to win this election by all indications, right? And now it's also very, very difficult to cheat in elections because of the social media technology, empowerment from the bottom up, and it's just hard. You go to the polling booth, lots of people have their eyes on the counting, on the vote. So I think for young people, not surprisingly, that they are afraid that there'll be some tricks up the sleeves of the powers that be. On the other hand, if the margins of victory are unassailable, so substantial, it'll be difficult to overturn without a high price. I mean, a military coup would be the highest price, and you definitely get protests from military coup, get protests from the party dissolution. So if the margin is so large, 2019 the margin was small enough, to I think it was 136, 118. So yeah, I mean, fewer than 20 MPs, 18, you can kind of shade the margins and get the results you wanted. But now, if the margin is over 100 MPs, very difficult to overturn and manipulate and subvert. So if they do that, and young people are afraid of that, and there's a good reason because we've seen a lot of manipulations. On the other hand, we might see a deal, some kind of a compromise. They might remember 2011, the Yingluck government came to power. Pheu Thai won the election, won 265 out of 500. It was an unassailable margin. So they put up with it. They let it take office, and then once it made the first big mistake with the amnesty bill, the other side then derailed and basically ejected the Yingluck government with the military coup in 2014. So it could be that if the margins are unassailable, we might see some kind of a deal in the meantime to let it come to office and tolerate it until it makes a mistake, and then they'll figure out something down the road. But I think now the young people here, young voters, younger demographics, they're here to stay. So even whatever tricks are up the sleeve, I think it'll be very difficult. That's why I think there's no exit from democratization in Thailand. In the end, you can have more coups, more dissolutions, but it will come back to a vote anyway. And every vote we see, the pro-military parties are not winning.
You mentioned the C
Yeah.
word You mentioned the C word, which
Yeah,
is something that very
yeah,
many people
yeah,
are very apprehensive
yeah.
apprehensive about. If there is a coup, like we saw in 2006 and we saw in 2014, when there was a coup, there wasn't that many people that came out. In 2014, there definitely were, like Kun Rangsiman Rome and his friends came out to oppose it, but it was a very small minority that actually did something. So, like, if there was a coup this time, do you think the kids won't let it happen where they would stand down? Do you think there would be people in the streets?
I think that, you know, for sure we have seen the uh, already protests in 2020. We saw protests in 2009, 2010, and there have been people who've been disenfranchised systematically. Certainly, if there's a systematic subversion of the result, there'll be demonstrations. Now, to what extent, how far, I think it'll be certainly more vociferous, more intense, and more widespread and more sustained than what we saw in 2020. And if there, it depends on, the kind of suppressive tactics, the kind of back and forth, but it could really spread. You remember it's not just the younger people, but also the older people. I mean, the old red shirts, I mean, they're not happy with coups either. So if you have combined forces of people who don't want to go back to a military authority in the future, another coup, if they're opposed to a coup, they could really put up some resistance. And then it depends on, the people behind the coup, if they're willing to pay the highest price and really crack down. And so that could really spiral. It's hard to say. We haven't gone that far and hope we don't get there. I'm hoping that still there'll be some compromise, but at the end of the day, Cod, there has to be some change and reform in Thailand. And we can do it incrementally, but denying it will not work.